Hey folks, James Abrinio coming to you from Abrinio Cho, your Northern Virginia personal injury and criminal defense law firm. It's October 30th, so the day before Halloween. Wishing you guys the best. Hopefully you're excited about the young trick-or-treaters coming around and you're just enjoying the time. If you have been paying attention to the local news, maybe even the national news, you're probably aware that there is a relevant timely story coming out of Alexandria. Apparently, it turns out that some family members tried to play a pretty scary joke or prank on some other family members that essentially prompted the victim family members to call law enforcement, and a big investigation ensued over this scary Halloween prank. I figured we could take some time to learn a little about the story. If you don't know, I'm going to show a couple videos, one from WUSA 9, and then also an interview of the police chief. And then we'll talk about the implications, a little bit about Virginia law, criminal investigations, and hopefully you can learn a little more from this incident, and also maybe make a little better judgment calls. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get this video rolling for you.
It certainly is. This video you see here, it is what nightmares are made of. But this wasn't just a prank. This masked trio, they banged on the door of an Alexandria home, threatened to kill the people inside, and eventually tried to break in. Well, as you'd imagine, this was terrifying for the homeowners, who say the people in this video crossed the line. But this was no nightmare. Open the door. It was a reality for one Alexandria family. Either you come out or we coming in. It happened around 10 p.m. Tuesday near Duke and South Jordan Streets in Alexandria.
At first, I thought it was just a Halloween joke, a little prank. So I said happy Halloween.
Shayla says she thought they'd leave, but they didn't. So she called 911 and told them cops were on the way, but the trio seemed unfazed.
And they kept knocking on the door. The knocks would get harder and harder. Open the door! They threatened to kill us.
When they couldn't get in through the front, she says they came around back.
This whole thing, they broke down, as you could tell.
She showed us the damage. So did they actually go in there?
Oh, yes, ma'am. They hopped up on here and they came through.
She says they went right up to the glass.
They were just hitting the window.
She says they finally left after about 10 minutes. Police were at their home Wednesday. She says this is not a joke.
It's not even a joke gone wrong. They tried to enter into the home. My heart dropped when they said that they were going to take a chair and break down the door. That is just too much.
She says it's left their whole family shaken up, especially her mother.
My dad recently just died, so it's just I'm just glad I was there. Now she's in fear. She don't want to stay there by herself.
She says this could have ended much differently.
It could have been bad. Our Second Amendment right was not used and could have been, being very transparent.
To the people behind these masks,
that was given grown-up activity. The time frame alone, 10 o'clock at night, to knock on someone's door in costume is never okay. Halloween, not Halloween, it's never okay.
So if you know who these guys are, if you have any footage of them on your doorbell camera, again, this happened in the area of Duke and South Jordan Streets in Alexandria. Make sure you contact Alexandria Police.
Now, as you can see, that news story was broadcast a couple weeks ago, and at that time, the individuals that did this prank were unknown. Obviously, the victims did not know it was family members, and so they perceived it to be a true threat. Obviously, terrified. Even mentioned, referencing Second Amendment, essentially defending themselves with a firearm. So you can see how serious this is. Obviously, it was serious enough for the local news to be seeking out information on behalf of law enforcement. So fast forward to just just 2 days ago, this is DC News Now. Again, I'm going to link both of these videos in the show notes so you can access them directly. And thank you for their good efforts in reporting. And so let me just play a quick police update. They gave a news conference after they figured out what was going on. So let me just go ahead and play that for you.
The 14th, we received a 911 call, initially reported as a suspicious event. Later, this was upgraded to a burglary in progress. Our officers arrived on scene within 2 minutes of being dispatched. Through interviews, With this family, investigators have learned the initial victim first contacted her brother instead of calling the police. And once we were called again, we immediately responded. A significant break came after our first press conference. We received multiple tips that created valuable leads. Following those leads, investigators discovered that the three masked individuals were related to the victim. An adult female suspect later confessed that her and her two sons and her nephew, early in their teens, were responsible for approaching the home. In addition, there were two adults and a child in the immediate area filming or standing by for the conclusion of this event. In total, there were 3 adults and 4 children involved. What we now know was a prank. I want to specify the victim had no knowledge of this event. Because the family has chosen not to press charges, the suspects will not be publicly identified. While this incident may not result in a criminal prosecution, for me, my team, and for this community, it represents a moral failure. A moral failure where consequences could result in deadly consequences. I want to specify this because we have saw this type of behavior around the country where people have done pranks and they have resulted in people being seriously injured or losing their lives. And as we approach this Halloween season, I want to ensure that everyone knows here within our community that we will be taking actions to not only be visible on the streets, but we also will be providing safety tips this week to ensure that everyone has a holiday experience that is going to be well and safe. And so I'm subject to any questions that anyone has.
I know the charges aren't going to be filed because the family doesn't want charges filed, but you just said that it took 100 hours of manpower to solve this case. Should they not pay some sort of restitution or something?
So in the Commonwealth of Virginia, the family cannot decide to press charges, but the Commonwealth attorney can decide whether to move forward with charges or not. In the interest of justice and us identifying what has happened and occurred, I am speaking about this publicly. As I talked about it earlier, it is a moral failure, and we have taken the action to investigate it. And at this time, we're still deciding not to move forward with charges after consulting with the family and also talking with the Commonwealth attorney.
So, as you can see, as these events essentially played out in real time, we all came to learn that the perpetrators of this now known prank were family members. And despite that, at the time, the victims had no knowledge. They thought their life was at risk. Again, they referenced the Second Amendment. Easily something very, very serious could have happened, leading to serious injury, death, and all that. So I think the first thing, obviously, to take away from this is no matter how you choose to celebrate Halloween, there are a lot of mistakes that can happen very quickly and not intentionally. I don't think the perpetrators here, despite what terrible judgment, doubt they had ill will to the family members. I hope they didn't. But, even situations where you're making decisions that don't have ill will can lead to serious, serious consequences, life-threatening. It also, obviously, here led to very serious consequences from a law enforcement standpoint. So I do want to commend the Alexandria Police Department on how they've handled this. I think it was completely appropriate to have a press conference because the public had a right to know, because there was concern. Maybe this is not just one-time incident. Maybe the community needs to be afraid that the perpetrator here are going to keep doing it. So the community was fearful. They also had a right to know, what is the story behind of this, particularly given just the public nature of it and it got in the news. I also respect the fact that they were straightforward and honest about, ultimately, it was the prosecutor, in Virginia we call it the Commonwealth attorney, their call whether or not to prosecute. But the victim, the family of the perpetrators had some say in it. And they also were maintaining privacy for the individual perpetrators because no criminal charges came down the pike. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I respect that because you're sharing information with the community, but also because the criminal charge hasn't happened, that information should not be public, and that makes a lot of sense. The last thing, fundamentally, even had charges come down the road, people are presumed innocent until proven otherwise, until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And if you're not charged with a crime, I think it makes absolute sense to not release those names, because effectively, especially in our social media, online lifestyle, once your name is out there, it's pretty much the same as conviction. I mean, their names would be, anytime a job application was filed, people start Googling names, and there it is. So I think that's absolutely appropriate. Now, a couple things that I think were really important that I just want to kind of hone in on is the law enforcement officers' discussion about, ultimately, it is the Commonwealth's call about whether or not to prosecute a crime when an alleged crime happened. Okay, this comes in my cases a lot more frequently when it comes to domestic violence charges. So you have a spouse that is alleged to abuse another spouse, and in many instances, the prosecutor's office, the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, despite of an alleged victim not wanting to go forward, will prosecute a defendant because ultimately it is their call. They represent the community. The victim, in a lot of ways, is just the star witness to any crime. While obviously victims and crimes matter, ultimately it is the prosecutor's job to determine whether or not there's sufficient evidence and whether or not to proceed. Here, there was obvious, I think, crimes that were prosecutable, but if you have here a victim doesn't want to go forward, it makes it, just from a logistical standpoint, difficult. If let's say, for instance, destruction of property, but now the victim doesn't want to go forward, so how do you prove that they actually didn't give them consent to destroy the property, that kind of thing, just from a technical standpoint. But I don't really think that was the reason it didn't go forward here. I think it was more of a I imagine the Commonwealth Attorney's Office discussed with the victim, and they had a real heart-to-heart about what made sense for them and what made sense for the community. And ultimately, again, I wasn't, I'm presuming here, I wasn't in behind the scenes to know exactly what was said and who was said and that kind of thing. But just based on the public statement here, I think there was a real heart-to-heart and ultimately discretion not to prosecute. I can tell you this decision could have easily been different if you're in a different jurisdiction. I think more of the conservative counties, I would not have been surprised to see a charge, regardless of what the victim, the complaining witness, wanted, to essentially send a message to the community. And on a case like this, I could understand a prosecutor being concerned because it caused so much concern to the community. Also, if you could hear a reporter there mention that effectively 100 hours or so was essentially wasted investigating this alleged crime, where law enforcement officers could have been using their time more productively, whether it's investigating other cases or even just being out on the street to prevent further crime. So obviously there were consequences from these bad judgments, but look, I'm a defense counsel. I certainly understand and appreciate why a Commonwealth attorney would not go forward, particularly when a victim did not want to go forward. Another question was asked about, well, shouldn't restitution be ordered or these perpetrators be forced to pay for the lost resources? Personally, I can certainly understand that appeal. But then I think about situations where you have very different facts, very different situations where all of a sudden now, a law enforcement agency may not have enough, so they choose not to prosecute. But they say, if you pay restitution, we won't bring the case forward. And I think you get into a slippery slope in that regard, where that can be abused. And also, at the end of the day, look, either a person is charged with a crime or a person is not charged with a crime. I think setting up kind of a secondary system on essentially paying for investigations, charges not to go forward, I just see a lot of concern for abuse there. But that's this case. Other cases, different facts could be argued, but that's just kind of my off the cuff thought about that. A couple things. I saw other reporting about kind of what happened here, and it sounded like that certain statements were made to law enforcement, perhaps not truths were told, and there was concern for obstruction of justice and things like that. Look, if you were just from first of all, the behavior here was inappropriate, unacceptable. Don't do it. You're lucky you didn't get prosecuted. Take your gift and go home and make sure not to ever come back, kind of thing. But I also have a lot of clients that call me. They're being investigated for crimes, various different types of crimes. I would never recommend lying to law enforcement. If you are being investigated for a crime, you have a right to assert your Fifth Amendment and not make any statements and contact law enforcement or contact your attorney and be advised of your rights. Okay. You don't have to lie to law enforcement. You can always just assert your Fifth and ask to speak to your attorney and demand to speak to your attorney. Some folks will say, well, won't that cause them to arrest me? Yeah, it might. In fact, a lot of times when law enforcement's investigating you, they're probably ready to arrest you. They just want to get more statements. And so my view has always been, if they're going to arrest you, they're going to arrest you. And it's rare that you're going to be able to talk yourself out of the circumstances. Does it happen occasionally? Sure. But, and again, this video is not legal advice. Every case is different. Every facts are different. And you need to be talking to your specific attorney about legal advice. As you can see, the moniker, not legal advice, information only. But generally speaking, when folks call me and say law enforcement is trying to interview them, I always say, get an attorney, assert the Fifth, and say that you want to talk to your attorney. So, I think that this case presents a unique learning experience. Hopefully the discussion I had was useful. If you have questions, make sure to reach out. Feel free to comment. You may absolutely disagree and think that these people should have been prosecuted and think they should be owing all debt that the taxpayers have incurred. That's a reasonable view. I understand that. But again, I do both criminal and civil work as a criminal defense counsel. Again, I do appreciate the effort by the police department to be open with the public, but also the Commonwealth Attorney's Office abiding by a victim's desires not to go forward. I appreciate that. I think that's a decision that not every prosecutor would have the guts to make. So I appreciate that. And obviously the investigation, they did their job. So great work, everybody. Wish safety to everybody. Wish safety to everybody this Halloween coming up tomorrow. To all the kiddos out there, have fun. To law enforcement, be safe, and everybody enjoy the holiday and welcome to winter. So take care.